The world can't believe what China is creating in their labs, and once you see what's actually happening behind closed doors, you won't either. We're talking about skin that heals itself like something out of Wolverine. Scientists copying entire human brains to achieve digital immortality, and genetic modifications that could create enhanced humans who are stronger, smarter, and nearly disease-proof. This isn't some distant future. These breakthroughs are happening right now. And they're going to change everything you thought you knew about what it means to be human. But before we get to the most shocking discovery at number 1, let's start with something that sounds impossible. Self-healing, synthetic skin. Imagine getting a deep cut, and instead of needing stitches, your skin just repairs itself automatically, within minutes. That's exactly what Chinese researchers have created, a revolutionary biosynthetic skin that doesn't just look and feel like real human tissue. It actually heals itself when damaged. You slice it, it closes back up. You tear it, it regenerates. This isn't some laboratory curiosity sitting in a petri dish. They've successfully integrated it with human nerve endings, meaning it can actually feel, touch, pressure, and temperature, just like your natural skin. But here's where it gets really intense. This technology isn't just for helping burn victims or people who've lost skin in accidents. The Chinese military is exploring this for combat applications. Imagine soldiers with enhanced, nearly indestructible skin that repairs itself in the field. And they're going even further, engineering versions that are more durable than natural human skin, essentially creating the first generation of cyborg tissue. The line between human and machine isn't just blurring, it's disappearing. And if you think self-healing skin is mind-blowing, wait until you see what they're doing with how humans are born. 9. Artificial wombs. You're looking at technology that could eliminate the need for pregnancy as we know it. Chinese scientists have developed working artificial womb systems, complete external gestation chambers, where a fetus can develop from conception to birth without ever being inside a human body. They've already tested this successfully with animal embryos, growing them to full term in these glass and steel wombs that regulate everything: temperature, nutrients, oxygen with precision that rivals nature itself. But this isn't just about scientific achievement. For women who can't carry pregnancies due to medical conditions, this is hope. For premature babies born months too early, this technology could mean the difference between life and death. Chinese researchers have already used similar systems to save extremely premature infants, essentially putting them back into an artificial womb to finish developing. The success rates are shocking the international medical community. Yet here's the part that's making people uncomfortable. If you can grow a baby entirely outside the human body, what happens to natural pregnancy? What happens when becoming a parent doesn't require anyone to actually be pregnant? China isn't just asking these questions. They're building the technology that's going to force the entire world to answer them. But creating life outside the body is just the beginning. What they're doing with organs will make you question everything. 8. Lab-grown organs and bioprinting. Picture a 3D printer, but instead of plastic, it's printing living human tissue, layer by layer, cell by cell, building a functioning kidney, a beating heart, a working liver. That's not fantasy. Chinese scientists are doing this right now, and they're doing it at a scale that's leaving Western researchers stunned. Using advanced bioprinting technology, they've successfully created blood vessels, skin tissue, and bladder tissue that actually functions when transplanted into living subjects. But here's where it gets absolutely wild. They're not stopping at simple tissues. They're tackling the complex organs, the ones people die waiting for. China has the world's longest organ transplant waiting lists, with thousands dying every year because there simply aren't enough donors. So they've made it a national priority, pouring billions into bioprinting research, and it's working. They've already printed liver tissue that can process toxins, heart tissue that actually beats. The goal isn't 5 or 10 years away. They're talking about ending organ shortages within this decade. And if that wasn't enough, they've taken an even more controversial path: Chinese labs are growing human organs inside pigs and monkeys, creating chimeric animals with human cells integrated into their bodies. They're literally farming human-compatible organs inside living animals, and the success rates are climbing fast. The rest of the world is watching nervously, because China isn't just solving the organ shortage, they're rewriting the rules of what a transplant even means. But they're not just creating new organs. They're recreating entire living beings. Animal cloning industry. You've heard of Dolly the sheep, the first cloned mammal that made headlines decades ago. Now imagine that technology, but industrialized, commercialized, and operating at a scale that would have seemed impossible just years ago. China has turned cloning into a full-blown industry, and they're cloning everything. Your beloved dog that just died? They'll clone it for you. An elite racehorse worth millions? Cloned. Prize-winning cattle with perfect genetics? They're producing them by the dozens. The Sinogene Biotechnology Company in Beijing isn't some small research lab, it's a cloning factory. They've cloned thousands of animals, and they're not slowing down. Pet owners are paying tens of thousands of dollars to bring back genetic copies of their companions. Farmers are cloning their highest-producing livestock to maximize yields. It sounds like a luxury service for the rich, but the implications go so much deeper. Because here's what's really happening. China is perfecting the cloning process. Every dog they clone, every pig, every cow, they're getting better at it. Higher success rates, healthier clones, fewer complications. They're building a technical expertise in cloning that no other nation can match. And if you can reliably clone a dog, you can clone anything with DNA. They're also using this technology to save endangered species, cloning wild animals on the brink of extinction. Sounds noble, right? But the technology they're developing doesn't care, whether it's cloning a panda or something else entirely. And what they're creating next makes cloning look tame by comparison. 6. Hybrid embryos and chimeras. You need to hear this carefully, because what Chinese scientists are creating sounds like it came straight out of a horror novel, except it's real. It's happening in labs right now. And the results are both miraculous and deeply unsettling. They're creating chimeras, organisms that are part human, part animal. We're not talking about mythology anymore. We're talking about monkey embryos injected with human cells, growing human neurons inside their developing brains, pig embryos engineered with human genes, developing organs that are more human than pig. In 2019, a Chinese-led research team created monkey-human chimeric embryos and let them develop for nearly 3 weeks. They watched as human cells integrated into the monkey embryos, dividing and growing alongside animal cells. The experiment was eventually stopped, but the barrier had been crossed. Then came reports of human pig chimeras pigs being grown with pancreases, kidneys, and hearts that contain significant human cellular structures. The scientific rationale sounds reasonable enough: grow human-compatible organs inside animals to solve the transplant crisis. But here's what's keeping bioethicists awake at night. What happens when you put human brain cells into an animal? At what point does that animal stop being just an animal? Chinese researchers have already created pigs with human blood flowing through their veins and monkeys with partially humanized immune systems. The international community has raised alarms. Some call it groundbreaking medical research. Others call it an ethical nightmare. China calls it progress. And they're not asking permission. Because when you can merge human and animal, the next step is merging human and machine. 5. Brain-computer interfaces. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, firing electrical signals every millisecond of every day. Now imagine capturing those signals, decoding them, and using them to control machines with just your thoughts. Chinese scientists aren't imagining it, they're doing it, and they're moving faster than almost anyone expected. They've developed neural implants that can read brain activity and translate it into commands, allowing paralyzed patients to control robotic arms, type on computers, and even walk again using exoskeleton suits controlled purely by thought. But here's where China's approach gets aggressive. While Western companies like Neuralink navigate strict regulatory approvals that can take years, Chinese researchers are already conducting human trials at a pace that's making the rest of the world nervous. They've implanted wireless brain chips in patients with spinal injuries, and the results are shocking. People who haven't moved in years are regaining motor control. The technology is evolving every month, getting smaller, more precise, more powerful, and it's not just medical applications. The Chinese military is exploring brain-computer interfaces for combat applications. Imagine pilots controlling drones with their thoughts, soldiers communicating silently through neural links, reaction times enhanced by direct brain-to-machine connections. This isn't science fiction speculation. Chinese defense researchers have published papers on brain-controlled weapons systems and thought-based command networks. You're watching the convergence of biology and technology happen in real time, and China is leading the race. The question isn't whether humans and machines will merge, it's how far China will take it before anyone else catches up. But connecting brains to machines is only the beginning. What if they could copy your brain entirely? 4. Brain cloning and digital immortality. Death has been humanity's one absolute certainty. Until now, Chinese researchers are working on something that sounds like it violates the laws of nature itself. Copying your brain, your memories, your entire consciousness, and transferring it into a digital format where it could theoretically exist forever. We're talking about mapping every single neural connection in your brain, all 100 trillion synapses, and recreating that exact structure in a computer simulation. Your thoughts, your personality, your memories of your first kiss, and your grandmother's voice, all converted into data that never ages, never deteriorates, never dies. This isn't just theoretical anymore. China has invested heavily in connectome research, the science of mapping complete neural wiring diagrams of brains. They've already mapped the connectomes of simpler organisms and are scaling up fast, using the most powerful supercomputers on Earth, many of which are in China. Scientists are running simulations of neural networks that mimic how human brains process information. The goal is staggering. Create a digital copy of a human mind that thinks, remembers, and experiences consciousness just like you do. But here's where it gets philosophically terrifying. If they succeed in copying your brain perfectly, is that copy actually you? If your digital twin has all your memories and thinks it's you, what happens to the concept of death? Chinese researchers aren't bothered by these questions. They're racing toward digital immortality, while the rest of the world debates whether it's even possible or ethical. Some labs are even exploring downloading these digital consciousnesses into synthetic bodies or robotic hosts. You could live forever, not in heaven, not in some spiritual realm, but as data in a machine. The question isn't just, can we do this anymore? It's, should we? And China isn't waiting for an answer. But immortality through technology is just one way they're trying to cheat death. 3. Age reversal and longevity research. What if aging wasn't inevitable? What if your body could be reset, rewound, made young again at the cellular level? Chinese scientists are spending billions to answer these questions, and they're getting results that are making the global scientific community lose their minds. We're not talking about face creams or supplements, we're talking about actual biological age reversal, reprogramming your cells to behave like they did when you were 20, flushing out the damaged, worn-out cells that make you old, and replacing them with fresh, youthful ones. Chinese researchers have already succeeded in reversing aging markers in mice, extending their lifespans by significant margins. They're using cellular reprogramming techniques, literally rewinding the biological clock inside cells to make old tissue young again. They've removed senescent cells, the zombie cells that accumulate as you age and poison the healthy cells around them. In controlled experiments, old mice became more energetic, their organs functioned better, their fur even regrew thicker. The results were so dramatic that some looked middle-aged when they should have been ancient by mouse standards. But China isn't doing this just for the science. They're facing a demographic crisis, an aging population that threatens their economy and social structure. So they've made longevity research a national priority, with the explicit goal of extending human lifespan not by a few years, but by decades. Some researchers are openly talking about humans living to 120, 150, even 200 years old. And they're not just trying to keep you alive longer, they want you healthy, active, young. Imagine a world where 90-year-olds look and feel like they're 40, where retirement isn't the end of your productive life, but just a midpoint, where you could have multiple entire careers because you have the time. China is building that world right now, and the implications for everything, economy, society, overpopulation, resources, are almost impossible to comprehend. But extending life is one thing. Creating it from scratch is something else entirely. 2. Synthetic biology and artificial life. You're about to hear something that should be impossible. Chinese scientists are creating life that has never existed before, not modifying existing organisms, actually designing and building new life forms from scratch, writing genetic code, like software programmers, write computer code, and watching those blueprints come alive. This is synthetic biology at a level that's rewriting the rules of existence itself. And China is leading the charge into territory that most countries are too cautious to even explore. They've already created synthetic genomes, entirely artificial DNA sequences that don't exist in nature, and inserted them into cells that then come alive and function. These aren't natural organisms that evolved over millions of years. These are designer life forms, engineered with specific purposes. Chinese labs have built bacteria programmed to produce insulin, organisms designed to eat plastic waste and break it down into harmless compounds, microbes that can detect cancer cells and destroy them from the inside. Life forms that exist solely because humans wrote them into existence. But it goes so much further. They're working on creating minimal cells, the simplest possible living organism, with just the bare essential genes needed for life. Once you know the minimum requirements for life, you can add anything you want on top. Need an organism that produces a rare medicine? Design it. Want something that can survive in extreme radiation to clean up nuclear waste? Build it. The possibilities are limitless, and China isn't hesitating. Here's what's keeping international security experts awake at night. This same technology could create biological weapons more devastating than anything ever seen. Engineered pathogens, designer viruses, organisms programmed to target specific genetic populations. China has the capability to create life, which means they have the capability to create death in ways we've never imagined. They're holding the power of creation itself, and the world is watching very, very carefully. Because as dangerous as creating new life is, there's something even more shocking they're doing with human life. 1. Human genetic enhancement. This is it, the breakthrough that's making every intelligence agency in the world pay attention. China isn't just treating genetic diseases or curing disorders anymore. They're enhancing humans, making them better, stronger, smarter, more resistant to disease and pain. We're talking about deliberate genetic modification of human beings to create capabilities that go beyond natural human limits, and the scale of what's happening is absolutely staggering. Reports have emerged of Chinese military scientists working on enhancement programs designed to create superior soldiers, people with edited genes for increased muscle growth, faster reaction times, enhanced oxygen efficiency that would make them harder to exhaust in combat. There are documented cases of researchers experimenting with genes linked to intelligence and cognitive function. In 2018, scientist He Jiankui shocked the world by announcing he'd created the first gene-edited baby's twin girls modified to be resistant to HIV. He was condemned internationally and imprisoned in China. But here's the terrifying part. The technology worked. Those girls exist right now, walking around with edited genomes. And they're healthy. That incident proved it's possible. And while China publicly condemned He Jiankui, they didn't stop the research. They just made it more controlled, more systematic, more ambitious. Intelligence reports suggest programs exploring modifications for disease resistance, enhanced healing, improved memory, even delayed aging. Imagine soldiers who barely need sleep, who heal from injuries twice as fast, who can process information and make decisions at superhuman speeds. Imagine a generation of children born with genetic advantages that make them fundamentally different from everyone else. This isn't evolution anymore. It's directed human enhancement. And China has the technology, the resources, and reportedly, the will to do it. While other nations debate the ethics, China is potentially creating the first generation of genetically superior humans. This is the new arms race, except instead of nuclear weapons, it's biology. Instead of bombs, it's genes. And the implications are beyond anything humanity has ever faced. You're watching the future of the human species being rewritten in Chinese laboratories. And whether the world is ready or not, it's already happening.